Testing. It's working.
Tapuan.
I'm on my way, right? No, what are we doing? Sing a song. Yep. Got it. Good morning. Richard, you go ahead and mute the yellow. Thank you. I appreciate that. Eliza's here to sing with me. And I'd like you to sing with me too. If you'd rise in body and or spirit and join me in starting off our service this morning with some singing. This is Come Sing a Song with Me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll sing with hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Welcome to worship.
Good morning, First Unitarian. Good morning. Welcome to those of you here in the sanctuary, and welcome to those of you watching on your screen. Whomever you are, whomever you love, wherever you come from, we are glad you are here. You're invited to join us on this great journey of the mind, the heart, and the spirit. Our call to worship today is For What Binds Us by Jane Hirshfield. I like the poem because it keeps commitment simple. There is no mention of certainty, of biblical covenant, or formal agreement. It only talks about the way people love and heal. For what binds us? There are names for what binds us. Strong forces, weak forces. Look around, you can see them. The skin that forms in a half-empty cup. Nails resting into the places they join. Joints dovetailed on their own weight. The way things stay so solidly wherever they've been set down. And gravity, scientists say, is weak. And see how the flesh grows back, across a wound, with a great vehemence, more strong than the simple, untested surface before. There is a name for it on horses, but it comes back darker and raised, proud flesh. As all flesh is proud of its wounds, wears them as honors given out after battle, small triumphs pinned to the chest. And when two people have loved each other, see how it is like a scar between their bodies? Stronger, darker, and proud. How the black cord makes of them a single fabric that nothing can tear or mend.
Whoever you are, wherever you are welcome here. I invite you to turn to a neighbor, look across the sanctuary, and welcome someone as we sing together. We are many, we are one. The light of the world is within you. Sacred and worthy is your soul. A place has been made for you. Welcome.
All right, if you want to join in on the chorus, you are welcome to do so. Let's see, get this closer. Why don't you set that down? One, two, three. Oh, just join us lightly at the beginning. 2, 3, 4.
We have fallen down again tonight. In this world, it's hard to get it right. Trying to make your heart fit like a glove. What it needs is love, love, love. Everybody wants to love. Everybody wants to be loved. Oh, oh, oh. Everybody wants to love. Everybody wants to be loved. Oh, oh, oh.
Happy is the heart that still feels pain. Darkness drains and light will come again. Swing open up your chest and let it in. Just let the love, love, love begin.
Everybody wants to love. Everybody wants to be loved. Oh, 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 oh. Everybody wants to love. Everybody wants to be loved. Oh, oh, oh,
Oh, everybody knows the love. Everybody holds the love. Everybody falls for love.
Everybody feels the love. Everybody steals the love. Everybody heals with a love. Just let the love, love, love begin. Everybody wants to love. Everybody wants to be loved. Oh, 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 oh. Everybody wants to love. Everybody wants to be loved. Oh, 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 oh. Everybody wants to love. Everybody wants to be loved. Oh, oh, oh.
That was so fun. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm going to read us a story today, and I'm actually going to come around. So if you're young or young at heart and you want to come up here so you can be closer to the story, you're welcome to come up, but you do not have to. It's totally up to you. The book that I'm going to read is called Unitarian Universalism is a Really Long Name. Yeah, because it is. I bought this book for my family back in 2016 when we had Miriam's book table. Used to be out there during coffee hour with lots of different cool books of all different sorts. And I picked this one up because I was trying to explain at the time to a 4-year-old what it was that we did here and why it was that I was going to be working in a church. And so I bought this, and I'm going to share not the whole thing with you. It's actually fairly dense for being a little kid's book. But I'm going to read a couple of the pages to you. And I also, the other book I have up here that I'm covering up because it has stickers on it with questionable language, that's my planner back here. And in my daily planner that I carry around during the year, I write in the front cover what our church's covenant is, as a reminder when I'm going through my days and my work here, what our covenant is. And so I was going to read that to you this morning also as part of what I'm reading in the book. And I could print it out or I could just pick up the thing where I already know that I have it. And so that's why my planner is up here today. All right? So I'm going to sit down now and we're going to read Unitarian Universalism is a Really Long Name, written by Jennifer Dant and illustrated by Ann Carter. Oh, yeah, that'd be great, thanks. So, welcome, friends. If you're reading this book, it means you want to learn more about Unitarian Universalism. Maybe your family goes to a Unitarian Universalist church and you have some questions. Maybe you have friends who are Unitarian Universalists and you are curious about their faith. Either way, asking questions and looking for answers are important to Unitarian Universalists. We believe that no one is ever finished learning. Our faith keeps growing and changing like all living things. This is why we call our faith the living tradition. Let's go exploring and find some answers to your questions together. So here's the picture. On one side, you have a group of people holding a welcome sign, and on the other side, they're holding a sign that says friends. All people are important no matter what they look like or where they come from, if they're boys or girls or anything else, how much money they have, or what kinds of families they live in. None of us is exactly alike, even when we live in the same family or go to the same school, and our differences make the world a better place. So here's a fun, it looks like these people are like walking, maybe in a marathon. Maybe they're running. I would be walking if it was a marathon. How do we worship? Unitarian Universalists gather in congregations to share, to celebrate, to give thanks, and to work for a better world. In our churches, we hear words and music from many different religions. We also read the words of modern poets and writers. Most worship services have a time to light the chalice, a symbol of Unitarian Universalism. Our services usually have a time for quiet thoughts and for a prayer said out loud. This time begins and ends with music, and often we say a covenant together. A covenant is a promise that we make to each other like this. And now I'm going to read our actual covenant. Allow me to switch books. So what I'd like to do is read a line and then have you say it back to me. Can we do that? Yeah? Okay. I will listen to you. I will make space for you. I will include you. Together, we will be a community of love, respect, and justice. Together, we will learn about white supremacy culture to create an equitable congregation. Together, we will protect the vulnerable. When we fall out of covenant, we will call each other back in. Very good, everybody. That was great. That's our covenant. One more page I want to read to you in this book. And it says, who leads us? Unitarian Universalist congregations make their own decisions and rules and covenants. The people in the congregation plan together and vote on important decisions. This is known as the democratic process. Most congregations have ministers. Choosing its minister is one very important decision a congregation makes. Ministers are people who help us live as Unitarian Universalists. They tell stories, sometimes called sermons, that show us what it can mean to be a good person and how religion can help us. Ministers help families when someone is sick or dying. They believe deeply that each person matters, and that they remind us to believe that too. They help us understand that when we work together, we can make a difference in the world. Ministers can help us talk about hard questions like, how do I decide what is right and what is wrong? So I'm going to end our Time for All Ages this morning by just asking you to ponder, what would you like to ask a minister? Yeah? In our covenant, we listen to one another and we make space for each other, and that means we make space for our questions, we make space for people's existence in our physical space together here when we are in the building, back in the building. And so I'm going to ask that we be gentle with one another back in this space, and we extend an awful lot of grace to one another as we navigate coming back together fully into our community after a difficult period of separation. But I am so glad that you are here in Unitarian Universalism with me. It really is a very long name, and if you want to read more of the book, I'll have it out there after the service. Thank you so much for being here this morning. You ready for questions? Not right now. It doesn't have to be right now. All right. Thank you.
The answer is it depends.
Would you please rise in body and or spirit and join me in singing, I'm on my way. I'm on my way to the freedom land, to the freedom land. I'm on my way to the freedom land. I'm on my way to the freedom land. I'm on my way, great God, I'm on my way. I asked my sister, come with me. I asked my sister, come and go with me. I asked my sister, come and go with me. I'm on my way, great God, I'm on my way. I asked my brother, come and go with me. I asked my brother, come and go with me. I asked my brother, come and go with me. I'm on my way, great God, I'm on my way. I'm on my way, I'm on my way to the freedom land. I'm on my way to the freedom land. I'm on my way to the freedom land. I'm on my way, great God, I'm on my way. I'm on my way.
On for a road trip, huh? Thank you, guys. Good morning. I'm Colleen Bryan, and I'm a member of your Giving and Action team here at First Unitarian Denver. This week, Gia has invited the Denver Justice and Peace Committee to receive your weekly collection. You can donate either by clicking on the Give button and scrolling down to Giving in Action on the church website or at the tiny URL link. Or if you're here in the sanctuary and you want to leave something tangible like cash or a check, you can put it in the red basket that Beverly's holding up in the back of the sanctuary today. The Denver Justice and Peace Committee has worked for 40 years to build solidarity among the people of Denver and wider Colorado with the peoples of Latin America. DJPC uses education and public forums and advocacy to foster engagement and to further understanding about how our local choices have rippling impacts on indigenous and oppressed communities that are far away from us. I think of them as persistently drawing a through line from our day-to-day choices, political and corporate and consumer choices, to their effects as expressed in outcomes like immigration, environment, and environmental degradation, and human rights assaults in Latin America. This small organization depends a lot on volunteers, and many of you through the years have been volunteers with the organization. And it's always a joy to me to mention the Justice and Peace Committee and have people say, oh yeah, I know, oh yeah, I work with. So that's kind of an affirming thing. I want to invite today, please welcome my friend, Lynn Holland, and her friend, Rebecca, whom I just met this morning. And they are going to tell you more about the work of the committee and also about how your donation today would be used. Thank you. Lynn?
Good morning, everyone. Buenos días a todas y todos y todes. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Buenos días. I am Rebecca Zuniga, and I'm the director of the Denver Justice and Peace Committee, and my friend here is Lynn Holland, who all you might know. Thank you for inviting us to tell us about the Denver Justice and Peace Committee, or the DJPC.
I'm sure many of you have heard of food deserts. Food deserts are urban and rural areas where it is difficult or even impossible for individuals and families to obtain good quality fresh food. They may be able to find canned goods and packaged snack foods that are high in sugar, salt, fat, preservatives, but not nearly enough fresh fruits and vegetables. Grocery stores are simply too far away. A large number of these food deserts are found in high poverty areas and neighborhoods where with large numbers of new immigrants.
The Denver Justice and Peace Committee, or the DJPC, actively supports migrants while still in their home countries, or after they arrive here, or everywhere in between. We do this through our delegations to Mexico, Peru, and other Latin American countries, our educational forums, which are both online or in person, and social action. We also go out to different parts of Denver, known to be food deserts, including Westwood in West Denver, the Grow House in the north area of Denver, and Celebration Gardens in South Denver. We harvest tomatoes and other vegetables at the community gardens. We also shovel mulch to improve the fertility of the soil and help build, paint, and clean the grounds around the gardens.
Our work days are long, exhausting, and fulfilling. And they usually end with a cold drink and a shared meal hosted by members of the community who are now more able to purchase fresh food at a low cost. We do this and all of our activities as volunteers under the guidance of our director, Rebecca, who also volunteers her time.
To close, we would like to invite you to join us probably in August when we have our called Bill for Peace, when we go and pass around the sunblock and get ready to the next harvest. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Shall we gather by the river, where bright angel feet have trod, with its crystal flowing river, flowing by the throne of God. Yes, we'll gather by the river, the beautiful river. Gather with the saints by the river that flows by the throne of God. Soon we'll reach the shining river. Soon our pilgrimage will cease. Soon our happy hearts will quiver with the melody of peace. Yes, we'll gather by the river, the beautiful river. Gather with the saints by the river that flows by the throne of God, that flows by the throne of God.
Good morning, First Unitarian Denver. A few joys and concerns of our larger community that I'd like to share right now. I want to celebrate with Colleen Bryan and her family. Colleen has a new granddaughter. Baby Rose was born a month ago. And I want to celebrate with Kimberly Urish, who is here somewhere. There she is. Kimberly has a new job. She's going to be the senior manager for major gifts at Orbis International. So congratulations to Kimberly. And I want to celebrate with George Mitchell, who's here with us today. George had a 90th birthday. I want to ask for support for Rolina and Arnie Carter, who are both down with COVID this week. And I want to mention that Dick Allen is a longtime member of First Unitarian Denver with his spouse, Betty Shuttleworth. He served on our personnel committee and at one time was a member of our board of trustees. Dick passed away last month. There was a private memorial service that we just learned about. So there won't be a memorial service that I know of unless the family contacts me, but many of you will remember, many of you will fondly remember Dick Allen. Ginny and Tom Faxon were longtime members of First Unitarian as well, though they moved to California in 2003 to be near their children. Tom passed in 2017 and Ginny passed just about a month ago on February 28th, just shy of her 100th birthday. I'd like to give a hearty shout out and solidarity to the parents of challenging children. Parents who spend years looking for a nearly non-existent mental health system or any kind of substantial help. Parents who frequently feel isolated and angry and helpless. We see you. We love you. We appreciate you. And I also want to hold up and give a shout out of solidarity to the families out there, and there's several of them in our congregation, and my family is one, who are doing everything they can, everything they know how to do to be supportive of Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia in the elderly. This can be extraordinarily confusing and draining. And again, we see you. We love you. We appreciate you. So what I want to offer today by way of a prayer was written by my friend, the Reverend Dana Warsnop, who actually gave a lovely sermon right here in this sanctuary. I think it was about 8 years ago. She wrote this: "Often people say they love coming to a place with so many like-minded people. And I know just what they're getting at, and I know they aren't quite getting it right. I don't want to be with a bunch of people who think just like me. I want to be in a beloved community where I don't have to think like everyone else and still be loved. I want to be with people who value compassion, justice, love, and truth, even though they have all kinds of different thoughts and opinions about all sorts of things. I want to be with independent-minded people of good heart. I want to be with people who have many names and no name at all for God. I want to be with people who see me in goodness and dignity and who also see my failings and foibles and still love me. I want to be with people who feel their interconnection with all existence and they let that feeling guide their footsteps on this earth. I want to be with people who see life as a paradox and don't always rush to try and resolve it. I want to be with people who are willing to walk the tightrope that is life and who will hold my hand as I walk mine. I want to be with people who let church call them into a different way of being in this world. I want to be with people who support, encourage, even challenge each other to higher and more ethical living. I want to be with people who inspire one another to follow the call of the Spirit. I want to be with people who covenant to be honest, engaged, and kind, who strive to keep their promises and hold me to the promises I make. I want to be with people who give of themselves, who share their hearts and minds and spirit. I want to be with people who know the human community is often warm and generous and sometimes challenging and almost always a grand adventure. In short, I want to be with people like you. Amen. I just can't help it. I really just want to offer up thanks and appreciation for all our wonderful musicians. Amen. So, building on what Aaron shared with us earlier, that book called Unitarian Universalism is a really long name. Once upon a time, I gave a sermon from this pulpit that had the title, Allah, Yahweh, Christa, Buddha, God. I said I was going to start a new religion with that name. And there were some obvious benefits to that new religion. For one thing, Allah, Yahweh, Christa, Buddha, God is actually 2 syllables less than Unitarian Universalism. Count it yourself. So our whole soul living theme this month is covenant. What I'm after this morning is what that means, like who we are and how did we get here. Unitarian Universalism, that is. And I'm going to start with some good old theology. So there's a million ways to approach theology, but to my way of thinking, there's really about 4 really big, overarching theological questions. And all the rest of them, of which there are many, are kind of subsets of those. Like, where did everything come from? Like, what's the source of all this universe, this cosmos? That's a big, overarching theological question. Is there a plan? Is there some purpose to this whole thing? Is there any such thing as destiny or fate in any way, shape, or form? Or is the whole show, like everything, is it all just random molecules run amok that just happen to end up with us? Big theological question. What, if anything, has real authority? Like, notice the root word author in that word. In other words, in this life that we share that is so profoundly precarious and fleet, what can we trust? What has authority? And related to that last one, what does it mean to live a good life? This precious, fleeting gift that we've been given. What does that mean? How do we know if we're getting it right? Big theological question. So human beings, right, have been almost unbelievably creative in trying to answer these questions. Myths, gods, stories, metaphors, whole philosophical systems, more. Once upon a time when Greece was wrestling with whether to be a republic or an oligarchy, people like Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and others were concerned with 2 of those theological questions. What, if anything, has final authority? And what does it mean to live a good life? And through their reflections and discussions, they came to the conclusion that the only trustworthy authority for human beings is direct personal experience and the use of reason. From that, they concluded that a good life was striving for personal and social betterment, the highest development of our minds, our souls, our bodies, our character, right to the limits of our ability, beyond which a healthy and appropriate humility should take over. They concluded a good life meant learning and growing and not ceasing until death to explore and experience all that life has to offer, valuing wisdom over mere cleverness, being accountable for our actions and our lives. These are some of the themes that begin to define liberal religion. Later, in the first few centuries after Jesus was crucified, back when Christians were most famous for their pacifism and the fact that they would eat and sing together, there was a powerful movement to organize all the Christian congregations under a single authority, collect tithing, and make Christian teachings exactly uniform and consistent. One of the Christians who was not fond of this movement towards uniformity thought long on this question: what is the source of the world? Where did it all come from? And found that he could not accept the answer that it was God the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Instead, he answered that the source of the world, and I love this phrase, was the agnostikos anarche, the unknown unbegotten. Agnostikos anarche, the unknown unbegotten. And he said that more than that, no one could really say. Arius was the name of this Christian, and while also pondering this question, what has final authority, he concluded the human heart and mind were probably more reliable than the teachings of the church. He thought the words Jesus spoke to the poor of his time were intended as metaphors. So, for example, when Jesus refers to God as Father or a loving parent, was never intended to be literal, but as a simple analogy, an image that his simple listeners could grasp. Arius and others like him laid significant groundwork for future Unitarian Universalists. A few centuries after Arius was excommunicated and exiled for those conclusions, another Christian named Pelagius found himself in conflict with the church. He was troubled by Augustine in particular. Augustine had developed a widely accepted theology of evil based on original sin and predestination. But like Plato, Pelagius was concerned with the questions: what has final authority, and what does it mean to live a good life? Pelagius could not accept the teaching that children were born inherently sinful. He concluded humans are born neither good nor bad, but basically free. And because free will exists, people must have some hand in their own salvation through the choices that they make. This made the church very unhappy. And although Pelagius died condemned for these ideas by both the Pope and the Emperor, ideas like that don't die so easily. 300 years after Pelagius, Johann Erigena meditated on some of these same questions, came up with some of the same answers. He also thought the source of the world was the unknown, uncreated, and all souls, he reasoned, being sourced from the unknown, uncreated, would eventually be reconciled back to that source. He thought reason, not revelation, the only trustworthy authority in matters religious or ethical, and he could make no sense of the existence of hell in the cosmos as he understood it. Pope Nicholas ordered his writings banned in 859. Pope Honorius III ordered them burned in 1225, but they didn't get all the copies. Arius, Pelagius, Erigena, many others like them, these are our spiritual ancestors. Another 7 centuries or so, when all of Europe was suffering economic hardship, war, social upheaval, our spiritual ancestors in the Reformation times were called heretics. Heretic, by the way, fabulous word, means one who chooses. That was considered a terrible, terrible thing. And just as an aside, I've heard rumors that back in the 80s and 90s here in Denver, there was a softball, inner-city softball league, and the Unitarians from several congregations put forth a team, and that was their name. They called themselves the Heretics. At various times and places, our heretical ancestors were jailed, disgraced, publicly disgraced, occasionally burned at the stake for their convictions. They suffered the wrath of organized Catholic and Protestant churches for believing that people had the right to make up their own minds about God and religion, for trusting in reason and science over arbitrary doctrines, for preaching that baptism should be reserved for adults who can make choices about it rather than imposing it on children who don't know the difference and can't say no, for concluding that the mystery at the heart of the universe is better represented by a unity than by a trinity. They were arrested and tortured for holding the radical notion that maybe everybody was a child of God, not just a select few, and for thinking perhaps maybe human beings should take on some of this work of doing good work in the world instead of waiting for a divine intervention. Horrible things. Through the period that is known as the Enlightenment, these themes were developed and articulated with great sophistication and clarity. It is not too much of a stretch, I don't say this lightly or flippantly, it's not too much of a stretch to see that the very idea of a democratic free society with guarantees of religious freedom and personal choice is firmly grounded in precisely these religious themes, these theological themes. In the 1800s, transcendentalists like Ralph Waldo Emerson, Theodore Parker, Louisa May Alcott, Margaret Fuller, and others moved these themes forward another step, shifting the emphasis from a liberal version of Christianity towards a more experiential, naturalistic religion, characterized more by our approach or thinking about the great theological questions more than by the answers we might individually find. And in the 20th century, the humanist movement opened the way for Unitarians and Universalists to explore these ancient questions through all manner of knowledge and expression, including but not limited to theology and religion, through science and art and poetry and story and history and music and mythology and symbol and more, intentionally trying to displace and move beyond 2,000 years of exhausted debates about the nature of Jesus and God. So by this time, Unitarians and Universalists had abandoned pretty much all pretense of religious doctrine in favor of covenants, intentionally opening our congregations and communities to Christians but also non-Christians, seeking a more inclusive, hopefully more honest way of being in community. And we're still at it. Right? We're still at it. Seeking to deepen our understanding and expand our vision to include the viewpoints and lived experiences of people who don't share any of that history. People who have been excluded and hurt by that history. People who see through the inherent oppressions and hierarchical assumptions of all that history. That's a journey we've really only just begun, frankly, as evidenced by the overwhelming caucasity of this gathering. Reverend David Bumbaugh once observed that most of us have very little idea of the particular theologies of our spiritual ancestors, Arius, Pelagius, Erigenes, Servetus, even Theodore Parker. We don't know them well, and we would frankly reject most of what they believed if we did. But, Bumbaugh wrote, but we know that our ancestors in the period of the Reformation were heroic souls who went out from the safety of the Roman Church, who dared to carve out a religious response to the times which reflected their own experience. And this is what we have in common. We dare, we aspire to carve out a religious response to our times, reflected in our own experience. This congregation, this tradition, in this troubled times, is proudly covenantal. We're held together not by a common theology, but by common aspirations. We are emphatically and proudly heretical. We choose this tradition, these values. We choose to do our seeking in community rather than in isolation. We understand that our covenant is as dynamic as we are. It represents our current articulation of how we wish to be together based on our current best understandings. We understand human knowledge isn't finished. We are not finished. And when our understanding deepens and our vision expands, we'll change our covenant to reflect what our understanding then will be. One other part of covenant, and this will be review for many of you, that is not written but is understood in our practice. It's actually written into our covenant for this congregation, not Unitarian Universalism writ large, but is this idea that we are accountable both to ourselves and each other for the covenants that we enter. We understand a covenant's not a contract. It's not just a promise, right? If you and I have a contract and I have a bad day and I don't live up to my end, that contract's broken. You're off the hook. Covenants don't work like that. You and I enter a covenant together. We state our aspirations in mutuality and respect and trust. And on the day I don't live up to my end of things because I had a bad day or whatever, you're not off the hook. And neither am I. Because part of this covenantal understanding is that we're going to respect each other enough. We're going to respect each other's aspirations enough that on the day I don't live up to something or you don't live up to something, we're going to call each other back in. And you're going to call me up or catch me outside and say, Mike, when you said that, or when you did that, or when you implied that, that's not what we said we were going to be about. So in covenant together, we seek to carve out, to live out a religious response to our times. And at our best, and we're not always at our best, but at our best, I think we have the beginnings of an answer. I think the answer starts with the acknowledgement, starts with the deep knowing that I believe all of us have, that we are made of the same stuff. We breathe the same air. We're sustained by the same cosmic chemical forces. We are infinitely, exquisitely, inextricably connected. In this congregation, we say there's a unity that makes us one and binds us forever together in spite of time and death and the space between the stars. We're born into a covenant with the cosmos, with creation, long before we make intentional covenants with each other. That's, I believe, the start of an answer. And I think the answer is further developed on the universalist side of things, this idea, this proposition that all souls are sacred and worthy, no exceptions at all, anywhere. I know of no more challenging spiritual discipline than that faithful commitment. Do you? So it starts here, it gets developed there, and it gets realized, well, let's be honest, imperfectly. Haltingly, in fits and starts, glimpses of truth and kindness and grace. One step forward, two steps back, the most frustrating, demoralizing, most powerful, most rewarding, most soulful work I have ever attempted to do. How about you? Amen? Tagore wrote, "I've spent my days stringing and unstringing my instrument, while the song I came to sing remains unsung." So I don't know about you, but that's why I'm here. In my white, male, middle class, educated, privileged skin. I'm here to be part of the answer, to grow into the answer, knowing that I need a tradition and people I can trust and be faithful to, people who keep me honest, who I occasionally hurt or make angry, who occasionally hurt or make me angry too. Covenant in community is hard work. Amen? On this journey of the mind, the heart, and the spirit, this journey towards a higher calling, toward a transformation that grounds us in the world, connects us to each other and the earth, and this great journey, we are all learning as we go. So here's the point of all this. Point of the sermon, the point of being a covenanted community, at least from my perspective. This congregation, this tradition exists both theologically and spiritually to be a point of resistance to the forces that seek to tear the human community apart. And let's be real, those forces that seek to tear the human community apart are both out there and they are in here. Your heart, my heart, our common souls, even in our community. But that doesn't change the fact, and I'll repeat it because it's important that we understand it and we get it. This congregation, this tradition exists theologically and spiritually to be a point of resistance to the forces seeking to tear the human community apart, and I would add to the forces that seek to tear the whole living world apart. This church holds us in a covenant, a loving, mutual, inclusive, deeply demanding covenant. If we will allow it to, that covenant will guide us towards relationships of trust instead of fear. Will source our inner and outer beings in life-giving peace and community. Will help connect us individually and as a community to the forces that create and uphold life. If we will allow it to. If we will be open to the truth of our own aspirations. Amen, friends.
After the choir sings, I'll invite you all to stand for our closing affirmation and stand through the benediction. Please rise in body and our spirit and join me in singing our closing affirmation. Behind all our differences and beneath our diversity, there is unity that makes us one, that binds us forever together throughout all time, life and death, and the space between the stars throughout all time, life and death, and the space between the stars.
Our benediction today is attributed to the Sufi poet Hafiz. Out of a great need, we are all holding hands and climbing. Not loving is a letting go. Listen, the terrain around here is way too dangerous for that. We're called to a revolutionary love that demands that we not let go. A love that demands that we draw our circle wider and wider and wider still. A love like that asks nothing in return. Even after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, "You owe me." Look what happens with a love like that. Lights up the whole sky. Amen. Our service is ended.